Welcome to Stitching with Cindy Botts. Today I want to talk to you about a log cabin block that I have done in a very non-traditional way. So here is my log cabin block, and when you first see it, you may not recognize it as a log cabin block because of the scrappy way that I put it together. But once you take and look closer at it, you can see that definitely is a log cabin block. All right, now the log cabin block starts out with, let me turn this a little bit so that I can show you where I started. So I started my log cabin block out with a white center. So this is my center. Then I added this piece here. Now traditionally this would be one color. This block would be one color. This little square here would be one color. Then you would add a strip of either the same color or a different color if you're going to make it strappy. Usually one side of the block is light and the other side is dark. Okay, so where I've taken the liberty of changing it up is in that my strips are scrappy. Traditionally, like I said, this square here and then these rows would not be scrappy in the row itself, but this would be one color, maybe green, and then this color would be blue maybe, or green. Sometimes you had the same color making this little shape here. Other times you might have, an alternating color, but the color for the whole piece would be the same for that whole strip. So I have changed it up, and I think it kind of gives a unique, different perspective on this traditional block. So let's take a look at some of the ways the log cabin block has been put together in the past. So this is one example of how you can put your log cabin together, and that is by having all the lights together and all the darks together, forming this kind of a pattern with the lights and with the darks. Okay, so I'm just going to try to slide you over here and see if I can get high enough so you can see that in the scrappy version. All right, so that is one configuration that you can do with your block. All right, it definitely has a different look to it by doing it in this scrappy version. Okay, but you can still see the kind of tiers or steps that you can get. All right, another way you can do this is by putting the darks and lights on a diagonal, and I am going to see if I can spin mine so that you can kind of get how that would look with this setup. All right, so then this one would stay like that, and this one would spin like this. So again, it does have a little different interesting variation to it by doing this way. You don't necessarily see the stripped like this. You get a very different overall look to it. You can see, looking at the white strips, how that would look in color. So if this was a traditional log cabin block, you can see how, this strip would all be the same color, or this strip and this strip. You get my point. I'm sorry, I for a second there I was not explaining it very well. But yes, you can see by how the white is pieced in strips, how you would piece the color section in strips also. So you would have a totally different look to it. And I think this is really a cool way to use up those scraps. And I'll show you how I made those scrappy strips in just a minute. So here is another layout that you can do for the log cabin block. And again, it has, I think this one is a barn raising, but I'm not really sure. I hate to say what the design is without being sure. So this is how the corner would look. All right. And then you have that same center configuration that we looked at the beginning. But you can see how that diagonal looks a lot different with all those scrappy colors than it would look like if they were all plain. So if you want to Google log cabin quilt images, you can see that there are a lot of different configurations for using this blocks, a lot of variations. It is such a versatile block, and I think doing it in this different scrappy way versus making them one color strips really changes it up, gives it a very unique look. So how did I make my scrappy strips that I used? Because I still used a strip method. So what I did was I took a piece of Eddie machine tape, and you may have seen different tutorials on using Eddie machine tape to make strips of scraps. So what you do is you take a nice piece of Eddie machine tape, whatever length you want. I just made mine the width of the sewing extension table. And then you just start at one end, putting two pieces of material together, right sides together, sewing your 1/4 inch seam, pressing it back, laying the next piece, right sides facing again, stitch your 1/4 inch seam, and you're just going to start at the one end and work your way down. You're going to want to finger press or iron each of your little seams as you go along, just so that you don't get any crinkles. So just kind of finger press that down and then sew the next one so you get a nice flat piece underneath. Okay, so then after you make your strip, I went ahead and ironed it. So that's what you're going to want to do, just in case there are any little crinkles. You want to iron it, and then you flip it over and you use the white paper as your template, and you cut right along the white paper. Then here's a little trick. You want to do that on both sides so that your strip is the same size as your 2 1/4 inch Eddie machine tape. Now a little trick, if you start at this end, you can hold your seam allowance with your one hand, and it makes it easier to rip this right off. Just gives you a little something to hold on to and is a little sturdier for when you're ripping it off than just ripping it from the other side. At least I found it to be easier. I'm just sharing that little tip. I found it much easier to hold that seam and then rip with the other hand. All right, so once you get that all cut down, you will have a nice strip like this. A nice strip of scrappies. And then you need to decide how many rows you want on your block. Now, my first one I made quite a big block, and I'm not sure that I'm going to make the rest of mine this big. I think I like this size much better, especially because I don't plan on making a quilt. I'll be making a table runner or a wall hanging. Right now I'm thinking more wall hanging, but it might grow into a lap size quilt. These blocks are so fun to make, and I did make several of the strips, so we'll see how it comes together. But I like to make a sample block. When I'm trying something new, I like to make a sample block. And one of the things I'm finding with my sample block is I got a lot of like extra, it looks like extra material in here. And I think that's because of the so many seams that are on these blocks that it really stretches and pulls. So I want to check and double check your measurements. All right, and you might want to take, and when you're done making it, take your square ruler and square it up. So for this one, it was going to be 14.5 inches for this, but I really think that is way too big, and I want to stay with the smaller size, which is this one. So for this one, I have the 3 rows of white, and I have the 3 sets of colored. And I'll just take my large square ruler and cut them so they're nice and square, and they'll fit together so nicely. Again, just really press it down. Try not to pull. Some of these look nicer. This one lays pretty well. This one I'll have to spend some time at the ironing board. This one doesn't look too bad. Again, I'll just have to make sure I press it down and this one looks really, look at that. That one looks really pulled. So that seam might end up coming out. I'm not sure exactly when I got that buckle in there, but you can see that set does not look very square. So that might be a practice square. That might turn into, pot holder, something like that. That one might not meet the cut for my finished project. But everything's a learning curve, and don't be too critical and hard on yourself. One of the ways I can fix that is just to take out this seam, because the seam's involved. Take out this seam. So Jack the Ripper and I will have some time together and just check the cuts. I may have cut it, just a little bit too big. Another thing you can do is square up after each round. So every time you make your round, so like here, you can square it up. Then when you do this next round, again, put it on your square ruler, square it up. So you're always squaring up as you go. And I think that's probably what I should do for the next set, is to do that so that I don't have this issue that I'm having with the crinkles. Give yourself some grace. All your things that you're doing should, be rewarding to you in some way. Should be a relaxation. Do not stress over the little things. Yeah, it's got some crinkles. Some time at the iron. When I quilt it out, most of that will be gone. All right, now this one over here, that gap, and no, that needs to be addressed. And it's doing it on this side too. So obviously I did something wrong there. But these ones, press them down and square them up. And like I said, the next squares I do, I think I'm going to be squaring up as I go. Learn those little lessons for yourself, and enjoy the process. Enjoy the creativity that you can have with these projects. And one of the things I loved about this project was how I could sit and just let my mind wander while I was making these strips. I mean, that was to me so enjoyable. All I did was have my basket of scraps next to me, and I would chain piece this. I would have, sometimes 5 of these strips at a time. I think at once I had about a dozen of them going, and just do one piece on this strip, next strip comes along, do a piece, slide it down, add the next one, and just a very calm, very relaxing. You don't have to worry about what color goes where. All you need to remember is that they have to cover the adding machine tape. I tried not to get too many of one color in a strip, but mainly it was not putting an identical piece next to each other. Like here I have two blacks, and they are not the same. They kind of read as the same, but it doesn't matter. This is a scrappy project. It's yours to enjoy. You know, if you're going to enter things into fairs or competitions, then by all means, you got to be super picky, because the judge is going to be super picky and critiquing your work. If it's just for fun, remember, it's just for fun. Now, you might be making a gift for someone who's super picky. Well, then, be more conscious and aware of all those little things. But please, enjoy your quilting, enjoy your sewing. When I first got my embroidery machine, I know I was getting so upset because, I'm retired now, but I was a teacher and limited budget for my hobby. And I was getting so upset and so frustrated with myself because I was ruining projects. And I was ready to turn in the machine. And thankfully, when I went to the quilt shop in the local area and I said that, I want to trade in the machine, I can't stand it, she really said to take a breath, come and take a class. And the class that she suggested was Stitcher's Garden. And in that class, they did a lot of work with the machine in the just getting to know your machine, all the fancy stitches that were on it, and a couple other little workshop type things. I think there was a Floriani class or workshop that they held, and that talked about the stabilizers and the threads, and there's just so much to learn. So I recommend watching these videos and learning as much as you can. Attend a class. I know when I was first learning, like the embroidery, there wasn't the YouTube and stuff that there are now on these things. So if you have the ability to take a class now and again, if you have access to these videos, there are a lot of wonderful things, a lot of different channels. I'm just starting out on my channel. I just recently retired, and this is my way to reach out to the world and keep teaching. So you have a great night. I'm starting to ramble. I need to say good night. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye now.